My name is Chris, and I never imagined that moving into a quiet suburban neighborhood would lead me down a path of terror and unspeakable secrets. I relocated here for a fresh start after years of living in a cramped city apartment, a chance to breathe, to leave behind the chaos of my past. The neighborhood promised calm streets, friendly faces, and well-kept houses, but from the moment I set foot in my new community, I sensed that something was terribly off. At first, the oddities were subtle. Neighbors greeted each other politely yet with a reserved distance, their smiles measured, their small talk laced with an unspoken tension. I was told that everyone here kept to themselves, a tight-knit community of families and professionals who valued privacy. I never thought to question it, that is, until I met Damon. Damon lived in the largest house on the block, a sprawling mansion that towered over the rest of the homes like a relic of another time. The exterior was immaculate, but the house exuded a cold, almost impersonal energy. I first encountered Damon on a cool autumn afternoon. I was unloading a box of my belongings when a sleek black car pulled up alongside me. Out stepped a young man, impeccably dressed, with an easy charm and a smile that both intrigued and unsettled me. "Hey there," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Damon. Welcome to the neighborhood, you must be new." His voice was smooth, his handshake firm. We exchanged a few casual words about the area. He mentioned working in finance and living alone, which struck me as peculiar given the sheer size of his house. Still, I shrugged it off as his personal quirk. The first few weeks passed in a blur of unpacking and meeting acquaintances. I attended a neighborhood barbecue, exchanged friendly nods with parents and retirees, and slowly began to settle in. Yet, as the days wore on, I couldn't help but notice an eerie pattern surrounding Damon's home. No matter the time of day, his driveway remained empty. There were no delivery trucks or visitors, just an unsettling stillness. It was as if the mansion had sealed itself off from the rest of the world. Then came the night that shattered all semblance of normalcy. It was a chilly Wednesday. I was awoken from a restless sleep by a persistent, deep thumping that vibrated through the walls of my modest two-story house. I lived in a home that overlooked Damon's property, a fact that initially excited me, as it allowed me to watch the neighborhood come alive at dusk. But that night, under the weak glow of a street lamp, I noticed something bizarre. Damon's driveway was filled with cars, perhaps a dozen or more parked in disarray. The mansion, which had always appeared pristine and silent, was suddenly illuminated by chaotic, flashing lights. A deafening mix of booming music and muffled laughter blared from within. My pulse raced. I wasn't sure if this was a late-night party or something far more sinister. Against my better judgment, I donned a hoodie, grabbed my phone, and stepped outside into the biting cold. I approached the front door of Damon's house, my breath visible in the night air. I knocked, once, twice, but received no answer. I tried calling him, but the phone rang endlessly with no reply. The booming music from inside only grew louder, a cacophony of distorted sounds that set my nerves on edge. Hesitantly, I pushed the door open. The foyer was a scene of bizarre chaos. There, scattered across the floor, were numerous pairs of shoes, fresh and old, arranged haphazardly as though someone had hurriedly discarded them. The space was eerily silent except for the incessant playback of recorded sounds, artificial laughter, clinking glasses, and the persistent hum of music. There were no signs of a live party, no spilled drinks, no dancing bodies, nothing except that disturbing recording. My mind reeled. I wandered through the empty rooms expecting to find some clue or sign of a hidden gathering. Every step I took echoed off the walls, the silence amplifying my growing dread. Then I found it. A narrow door tucked away behind a heavy curtain. The door led down to the basement, and something in its crooked angle drew me in. Despite every instinct screaming to flee, I felt compelled to discover the truth behind this surreal scene. I descended the creaking wooden stairs, the air growing colder and denser with each step. A pungent smell of bleach and something unidentifiably chemical assaulted me. At the bottom of the stairs, a single flickering light illuminated a long, narrow corridor. The atmosphere was oppressive, as if the darkness itself was heavy with secrets. As I inched toward the light, I began to hear it clearly. A low, rhythmic grinding noise, like heavy machinery or a buzzsaw operating in the distance. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure the sound would give me away. With trembling fingers, I approached a door at the far end of the corridor. I pressed my ear against the cold wood and listened. The grinding was unmistakable, deliberate, and hypnotic, a sound that seemed to belong to a nightmare rather than a human world. Taking a deep breath, I slowly pushed the door open just enough to peer inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. In the dim, flickering light of a single bulb, 3 older men were gathered in a tight circle. They wore faded work overalls, their faces partially shrouded in shadow. Their eyes were fixed on something in the center of the room, a large metallic contraption that emitted that unyielding mechanical grinding sound. The scene was disturbingly methodical, as if they were performing a dark ritual rather than any kind of legitimate work. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. I stood there paralyzed by terror as every instinct told me to run, but then I sensed movement behind me, a sudden noise, a door slamming upstairs. Panic surged through me and I spun around, heart in my throat, before dashing back up the stairs. I didn't stop until I burst out into the cold night, my breath ragged, my mind a whirlwind of terror and confusion. The next morning I tried to make sense of what I had witnessed. Damon's house was silent, its mysterious party reduced to an unsettling void. His sleek car was gone from the driveway, and the mansion appeared abandoned. I asked a few neighbors, but they only offered vague whispers, tales of a reclusive man, a troubled soul who kept to himself, or even rumors of secret gatherings that no one dared discuss openly. Their eyes darted away when I mentioned the basement, as if the very subject were taboo. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself increasingly haunted by that night. Every creak of my floorboards, every gust of wind rattling my windows, brought me back to the relentless grinding in that basement, the hollow eyes of those men, and the eerie emptiness of Damon's abandoned mansion. I began having nightmares. Vivid, terrifying dreams in which I was trapped in that basement, surrounded by the same ominous figures, unable to escape the overwhelming sense of dread. Determined to understand the truth, I started my own investigation. I scoured local records, trying to piece together Damon's past. I discovered that he had moved here under unusual circumstances, a man with a mysterious background, whispered connections to questionable business dealings, and a family history that no one seemed to talk about. I even found an old newspaper clipping hinting at unresolved disappearances in the area, though nothing directly linked to him. The more I dug, the more I felt I was entangled in a web of secrets that spanned decades. Late one night, driven by a mixture of obsession and desperation, I returned to Damon's house. I circled the property, peering through overgrown hedges and broken windows. I noticed a pattern. Certain houses in the neighborhood, usually so quiet and predictable, seemed to have moments of strange activity. A light flickering in a window, a shadow moving in the dark that disappeared when questioned. It was as if the entire community was complicit in a silent shared secret. I began to feel a persistent sensation that I was being watched. Every time I stepped outside, I sensed eyes tracking my movements from the darkness, as if the mansion itself had sent emissaries to monitor me. I started receiving anonymous messages on my phone, cryptic notes with barely legible scribbles that warned me to leave the past alone. The messages, filled with dread and urgency, only deepened my obsession. In the following weeks, my sleep was tormented by visions of that basement and the grinding noise that refused to fade. I felt that every unanswered question was a nail in my sanity. I became reclusive, spending my nights poring over notes and photographs of Damon's property, trying to decipher patterns that might explain what I had seen. I even revisited the basement on a stormy night, armed with a camera and a determination to capture evidence. But the house was empty, silent, abandoned, as if it had been cleared out overnight. Only the echo of that mechanical grinding lingered in my ears, a phantom sound that wouldn't let me forget. Now, months later, I live with a lingering paranoia. Damon has never returned, and his mansion remains a decaying monument to unanswered questions. The neighborhood has resumed its quiet routine, but beneath the surface I know there's a darkness that no one speaks of. A secret network of hidden truths that lurk in every silent corner. I share this story not as a boast or a twisted confession, but as a stark reminder that sometimes the quietest, most unassuming places hide the darkest secrets. In our pursuit of a fresh start, we may unknowingly step into a nightmare that refuses to let go, a nightmare that speaks in silence and whispers truths too terrifying to confront. If you ever find yourself in a place that seems too perfect, where every friendly smile masks an undercurrent of dread, remember my story. Look beyond the surface, trust your instincts, and never ignore that subtle sense of foreboding, because behind every closed door and every seemingly normal facade, there might be a horror waiting to be uncovered, and once you glimpse that darkness, it never truly leaves you. This is my truth, and as I continue to live with the memories of that night, I can't help but wonder if the mansion, and the silent secrets it holds, will ever truly let me go.